research review. CosmosEscape, taking over every database in Azure Cosmos DB. A critical vulnerability chain in Azure Cosmos DB enabled full read and write access to every Cosmos DB database. By Yuval Avrami and Lior Maman. Yup. So yeah, this is sick. Why are we doing cross-tenant Azure bug research review? I don't know, just kind of felt like it. Okay, so it looks like it's a quickie, which is kind of, we'll see how quick it is, but hopefully, I mean, why is there a Gremlin API? Alright, I'm back. Wiz Research uncovered CosmosEscape, a critical vulnerability in Azure's flagship database service, Azure Cosmos DB, via its Gremlin API. Oh yeah, you just call it a Gremlin API and then it sends gremlins into everybody else's instance. The vulnerability could have been exploited to compromise every database in the service, including Microsoft's own internal databases, potentially enabling a cross-service attack. Yeah, that's true. Like, I feel like if they have other Azure services built on Cosmos and then you pwn those, like, haha. That's, yeah. Through CosmosEscape, attackers could have acquired what we've dubbed the Cosmos Master Key, a platform-wide secret that granted two incredibly powerful capabilities. Okay. Takeover, retrieving the primary key of any Cosmos DB account on demand, resulting in full read and write access. Enumeration, listing all databases on the service with the ability to filter by specific organization identifiers like subscription and tenant IDs. Okay, this is a really good bug. So, alright, there's a lot of interesting like cross-tenant cloud bugs, and the oopsie, there's a credential that authenticates to all of them is definitely a pattern that, you know, the industry has seen before. Chained together, these capabilities could have enabled precision targeting at platform scale, from identifying a specific organization's databases to compromising them all from publicly accessible endpoints. Okay, so it has to be publicly accessible. Yeah, the enumeration piece is really nice. I should, oh, man. It's a fun time to think about cross-tenant, you know, like PaaS, cloud bugs. Cosmos DB is used internally across Microsoft services like Microsoft Entra ID, Microsoft Teams, and Microsoft Copilot. All store data in Cosmos DB. Their databases were potentially accessible via this vulnerability. Yeah, that's a nice impact. Microsoft has now fully remediated the issue, including eliminating the Cosmos Master Key. Yeah, that's Paz moment. Microsoft has introduced new guardrails in Cosmos DB to prevent similar attacks. CosmosEscape, taking over every database in Azure Cosmos DB, any region, any API flavor, including private databases. Okay, so yeah, you get the master key, and then you can just talk to any of them, and then it's like, oh man, why is there a master key? This research was assisted by an early version of Atlas, our AI vulnerability researcher. Expect more from Atlas soon. Required actions. Microsoft has fully remediated this issue. No customer action is required. Microsoft conducted a thorough investigation and found no evidence of exploitation of this vulnerability beyond the research described in this blog. Yeah. From a single query to unlocking every database. Cosmos DB supports multiple query APIs, and among them is Gremlin, a popular graph query language. Find all users over 30 and return their friend's name. Yeah, I only know like Neo4j. I don't know about Gremlin, but I'm okay with that. While running Gremlin queries against Cosmos DB, we noticed a suspicious .NET exception. Since most open source Gremlin stacks are JVM based, the exception suggested that Cosmos DB was using a custom Gremlin engine. This was interesting. Unlike standard SQL, where the engine maps queries to a fixed set of built-in operations, Gremlin servers often compile queries into executable code and run it in a restricted environment. Historically, these sandboxes haven't held up well, I'm sure. We suspected Cosmos DB's Gremlin sandbox may be vulnerable as well. Great. And it was. Cosmos DB's engine translated Gremlin queries into .NET code, enforcing a set of restrictions designed to prevent queries from reaching beyond Gremlin operations. These restrictions, however, did not sufficiently account for .NET reflection, allowing us to develop file read, write, and ultimately arbitrary code execution primitives all through queries against our own database. Yeah, this is like... if there's like a hero story of like an archetypical structure for cross-tenant PaaS bugs, like this definitely is where it starts with like, so I got access to my own instance, I looked at it, oh no, what do you mean there's some crazy creds here? Oh no, what do you mean these just work? Oh no, Oh no, there's shared infrastructure, or oh, there's some crazy cred that just worked. Yeah, so um, it's a yeah. I need to fill my mind with these kinds of images. They're good images to have. The following image shows the output of a specifically crafted Gremlin query ran against our database, resulting in the hostname command being executed on the Cosmos DB backend. Nice. By bypassing the Gremlin sandbox, we've gained code execution on the DB Gateway, a service that executes customer queries on their behalf running on the multi-tenant service fabric clusters. Looking around, customer databases weren't hosted on these clusters, but the DB Gateway still had to reach them somehow. It turned out it did so like any Cosmos DB client would, using the target account's primary key, which grants full read-write access to the account's databases. But how can the DB Gateway retrieve the primary key of our Cosmos DB account? Okay, so it's a credential vending credential. The Cosmos master key. So it's not like a credential that everybody's just like configured to be like, I like that credential. I know you. You're God. Welcome. Okay. Through credentials available on the cluster, the DB Gateway accessed a signing key that could retrieve the requested account's primary key. Okay, so it's a credential. Oh no, wait. We soon discovered the signing key wasn't scoped to a single account. It worked across tenants, regions, and even API flavors. SQL, MongoDB, Cassandra, and Gremlin. It was a platform-wide key that could retrieve the primary key for any Cosmos DB account on the service, all through publicly accessible endpoints. We dubbed it the Cosmos Master Key. I would dub it like the Cosmos... the Cosmos primary key granting key, because like that fits the stupid Microsoft like ticket granting ticket like kind of vibes, but it's the Cosmos master key or Cosmos primary key granting key. That'd be a funnier name, because the punchline is man, I don't know. The config store, Cosmos DB's account directory. The master key also unlocked the config store, a regional registry of every Cosmos DB account, containing account names, subscription IDs, tenant IDs, network settings, tags, and more. Okay, that's nice. The DB Gateway relied on it for account settings, like which IPs were allowed to access a database. That's a good thing to have. When you have like a credential that lets you vend credentials to get into any instance, it's like, well, how do I list all the instance host names? And it's like, yeah, that's worth playing for. Config Store was itself a Cosmos DB database, meaning it could be queried with the full flexibility of Cosmos DB's SQL engine. It also meant that the Cosmos master key could retrieve its primary key, enabling attackers that exploited CosmosEscape to list all the accounts in a region or query by specific tenant ID to identify a specific organization's databases. Okay, that's actually a really cool trick. So you use the what did I call it? The primary key granting key to grant a key for the database that holds the list of all the databases for the... Alright, yeah, oh man. Okay. Impact. Together, the Cosmos Master Key and the config store enable a powerful attack chain. True. Query the config store to enumerate all Cosmos DB accounts in a region or filter by tenant or subscription to target specific organizations. Use the Cosmos Master Key to retrieve the target's primary key, granting full read and write access to their databases. This affected more than just customer databases. Cosmos DB serves as a foundational infrastructure for numerous Microsoft and Azure services, meaning Microsoft's own internal databases were equally exposed. Awesome, and you can find them too, because you have the database of databases. CosmosEscape also impacted private network and CosmosEscape also impacted private and network isolated Cosmos DB accounts. Okay. Since the DB gateway is responsible for enforcing network isolation, compromising it allows direct access to private databases. Furthermore, write access to the config store suggested that an attacker could potentially overwrite network isolation settings. Conclusion. Cloud platforms are built in layers. Services like Cosmos DB sit in the infrastructure tier, powering a higher level offer. Man, I gotta go to reading school. I don't know, it's the M dashes. The M dashes are just throwing me off. Powering higher level offerings such as Microsoft Teams Entra ID and Microsoft Copilot. A vulnerability at this layer can cascade upwards and threaten the services built on top of it. Multi-tenant cloud services require at least one strong isolation boundary around tenant-controlled execution, one that exposes only a small, heavily audited attack surface. Everything inside that boundary should be treated as tenant-controlled and untrusted. Ideally, the boundary should be drawn tightly around the tenant's environment. The fewer resources it contains, the easier it is to ensure that privileged credentials, internal APIs, and cross-tenant paths remain out of reach. Dude, yeah, some clouds are better than others at that, but, I guess it takes iterations, especially as these services likely evolve over time and maybe the architecture shifts and oops. We responsibly disclosed this vulnerability to Microsoft, who remediated it. Microsoft deployed a hotfix quickly, and since the Cosmos DB team worked around the clock on a major migration, the Cosmos DB team worked around the clock on a major migration to a better hardened architecture. We'd like to thank the MSRC and Cosmos DB teams for their collaboration on this issue and continued partnership. For the full exploit chain in-depth analysis and a couple of surprises, join us at Black Hat USA for our talk. One key to roll them all, taking over a flagship cloud service. Oh man. Okay, well, I don't know. Would have been a cool talk to see. Then the vendor statement. I don't know. Is this just like standard Microsoft, like MSRC copy? Okay, it was reported in November 2025. That's pretty cool. And then it was disclosed July 30th. So they got this out day of. So yeah, I don't know. Shout out Wiz. I've used their product in the past at a past job. It was good. I liked it, and they have crazy researchers. I don't know. I feel like they just like they just snap up the best people. I guess they got a lot of money, and so they're like, yeah, let's get all these sick researchers so that like we can keep improving our product. It's a pretty good business plan. But I don't know. I was happy with their product, so yeah. And I don't know. They seem to find cool bugs. Yeah. All right. Research review pieces. All right. So where's the right? How does this generally apply to bug bounty? Yeah, so there's a common pattern here. If you're a cloud hacker, it's like, I don't know how much it applies outside of cloud hacking, but there's like an archetypical story here that you see like patterns of across this kind of finding. It's good to climb a tree to see what's going on, and sometimes that's like shelling your own instance of some PaaS service. Why did this work? I'm not sure why it was architected this way. It's an interesting design choice. It may have been due to like service changes over time. They had to like make things work. That could be. I don't know. It's hard to have. Man, I would not want to be. You can't break cloud services. How do you even update cloud? You got to do these cursed. There's a lot of backwards compatibility. The cloud was a mistake. Further research, I don't know, I guess, I'm sure it's interesting to look at whatever they've switched to with their new architecture and if it still has gaps and if you can still, just through the complexities of these databases, get a shell somewhere and poke around and figure out what's going on and how hardened it is. Conclusion, It's always the patterns you kind of expect, I don't know. It's pretty crazy the amount of impact that some of these bugs can have, especially with the dog fooding of the service, where it's like, oh yeah, well, this would let you pop all the like backing stuff for Teams, and it's like, rating, I rate this primary key granting key out of 10. So yeah, I guess we'll call this research reviewed. It's definitely a fun one, and I'm sure the talks was entertaining to see, like some of the details and the whole narrative arc. But sick.